good morning, and welcome to Dualitea. I am your host, Ash, and I am here with Kimbra. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you. I
Yeah.
love this show.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I tune in all the time.
Oh, thank you so much.
Topics are so great.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
For those of you who aren't familiar, Kimbra has her own podcast, and if you want to get into that a little bit, we can get into that. And you have a few shows.
I do.
And one of the most recent show that we actually did together, where Kimbra had interviewed me, so it's really an honor to have been interviewed, and it's an honor to have you here. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And the show is I'm a Fan. So it was about how I was a fan of you and this show. So it's funny how things go around, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And I believe that that's what it's all about. I've had a few people on here in the community that have their own shows, and I think that it's something that's so beautiful. Another topic for another podcast, talking about appreciation versus comparison, or competition rather, because
Yeah.
it's like we're all doing the same thing, but we're doing different things in different niche pockets. And I think that it's really beautiful to uplift one another. Even if we were doing the same thing about the same topic, I think that it's such a beautiful thing to be able to remember that no one will ever do anything like you. Like, no one will ever be you. No one will ever provide, even if they study you for years, they can never give you the content the way that you generate it naturally. So I think that that's always really cool. Just reminding myself and the community, because we're human beings, and the society has made a certain format for us to be in competition, in whether it's in gender things, or whether it's in all different kinds of brackets of things, and I feel like that's something that I constantly can hear about in the women's community, is that particular topic. So I think that, I just always like to put that in, drop that little seed anywhere
Yeah,
I
it's
go, 'cause
great.
it's important.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we were talking about that yesterday, or when we last met, the differences between people and how we navigate through it, because we are all different. Totally in culture, that plays a big role. Understanding different cultures and being okay with it, not to judge somebody for the way they may act because you don't understand it. So I can appreciate that. And I know you come from a different culture, and you support an indigenous tribe in upstate New York, which is going through a lot of things right now, which, wow. But it's only because people don't understand them, and where they're coming from.
Yeah.
So that's a hard lesson to learn.
For
It
sure.
is.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, everybody has their trials and tribulations, and I think that something that you were saying the other day when we had met up is just if nothing, just to be kind, be
Yes.
kind above all, because you never know what someone's going through. And some things we take personal, and they're not personal. And then, even if something is personal, it's it's not like it's something still going on with them, and it could be triggering. And I feel like the scope, I was just explaining a situation
And I had
before.
the same situation. Both of us, we've had. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to see something and feel like for example, we were talking, I'll share a little bit of what I was saying without all of the tea of it, but essentially just when you're left on red, you know what I mean? If I look at it from a bird's eye view, I can see all right, that's my abandonment issues getting triggered, right? Rather than zoomed in scope, it feels like I'm taking something personal.
Yeah.
And then from a zoomed out scope, it's I'm healing in that area of dealing with my worth, and when I feel insignificant, it triggers me to then take something personal.
Yeah.
That might not even be mine.
Exactly. No, it's so true. And that's actually one of the topics I would like to discuss, if we can, today.
Of course.
How to sort of work on getting ourselves out of that. And I'm a psychology major, so I want to bring up Freud, because Freud played a very big role in self-acknowledgement and acknowledging others, but first we have to fix ourselves before we can actually honestly be true to that. So and that comes right down to our defense mechanisms. And I brought, like, there's a lot of them, a lot, but I brought a few along that I think resonate the most with people. So, and let me just say the defense mechanisms are psychological strategy that they're unconsciously done, and it's used to protect a person from anxiety and unacceptable thoughts or feelings. So we use these defense mechanisms in order to cope with the world and people, but we don't realize we're doing it. So if you could take, if anybody could take away just one of these defense mechanisms today and work on one, you're on your way to being accepting of other people and being able to easily acknowledge other people. Because when you do that, it makes a person feel good. For example, I'm giving an assignment this week. It's Christmas. Just pick up the phone, reach out and call somebody you haven't talked to in a long time. Just make a phone call and say hi. And you don't know, it could change their day, and maybe they were going through something, and just by hearing you calling and saying, hey, I'm thinking of you, it could change their whole day. Oh my God, I said I wouldn't get but anyway, so that's one thing. Everybody should pick up the phone and just call somebody at random, just somebody I haven't talked to in a while, and say hi.
It's a beautiful thing, a beautiful practice to do, periodically when you're feeling that,
Yeah.
And it's like, interestingly enough, like I was going to, which I'll still shoot my friend a message, but yesterday I just had this thought of a friend of mine had gifted me a appa hat, right?
Oh.
So shout out to Akira if you're on here. Thank you for that. I was thinking about it yesterday, how, like, although we don't know each other that well, like, the fact that he took enough time to take heed of, like, different things that I posted and that I liked, and, like, gave me such a great gift that, like, I wear all the time, and, like, people are always like, where'd you get that? I'm like, oh, it's a gift, And I was thinking about that yesterday, and I'm like, I need to reach out to him because I haven't spoken to him in some time, and I want to just let him know, even though it's, like, 2 years later, like, because of course I said thank you then, but I just wanted to, like, rethink, because it's still giving me that joy and that love. So, like, I'm doing it here. If you're on here, like, then you're here, but even if you're not, I'm going to make sure that I reach out after. So, like, yeah, like, I feel like that's definitely something that is a beautiful thing, because it's like, I mean, obviously there's some things that sometimes you go a long time without speaking to people.
Yeah.
And maybe that's for a reason. You know what I mean? Maybe it's for a reason to not reach out, and then maybe it's for just because life just be lifing sometimes, and it just happens, and like you're just in it, and then all of a sudden you realize you haven't spoken to your auntie or your uncle or your cousin or whoever in, like, years, and you're like, oh my goodness, like, let me reach out,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the moment where you have to also just surrender, because if you think about it for more than, oh, okay, I haven't talked to them, let me reach out. If you're like, well, why haven't we talked? Well, why haven't they reached out to me? Well, then you might psych yourself out, because now you're starting to take things personal, and you're potentially creating scenarios in your head of situations that may or may not be true at all.
And we all do that.
Yeah.
I mean, to different degrees.
Absolutely.
But we
Absolutely.
definitely all do that.
Yeah.
And I think it's nice of your friend, because it shows that he was listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listening. And it's a big thing, listening to other people, what they're actually saying.
Yeah.
That's why if I get in discussions, sometimes I'll pause. And I might not even give a person an answer for like a few days, because I want time to think about it, because words are very powerful and they stick.
They do.
So, taking time to have some thought behind what you're saying to a person is really important too. And again, it comes from the self, because a lot of times people will just blurt out something and then later on think, oh God, I should have never said that.
Yeah, I
right?
can resonate with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Freudian slip, they call it.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Definitely that as well I can resonate with.
But it causes problems then, like, and
Anxiety, shame,
it
guilt.
doesn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
Like years later, somebody's, I remember when you said that.
Yep.
It's like, yikes.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to. One hard thing to do is filtering. Learning how to self filter.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, is a tough one. But getting to these defense mechanisms, I'll start with the main one, that I think's the main one, because this list is to help us, not to belittle, or it's to help us, so we can catch ourselves and correct ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But when we that self-awareness, we keep doing it, all of a sudden we start feeling better, and it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
It gets easier. So one is repression, and that's a big one, and it's keeping unconscious thoughts from becoming conscious. And it's because they are too painful if spoken, or could have an effect on someone else. So a lot of times, and I call it on the inside, we think about things and we want to say it, but we never do. We repress our feelings. So that's a form of a defense mechanism that can really be harmful. Because after a while, if you keep repressing your thoughts and not letting it out, it creates tremendous anxiety and even panic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I feel like with sometimes people don't acknowledge, like this whole podcast is about like acknowledging ourselves,
Yes.
right? And I feel like in order to even unpack repression, you need to acknowledge yourself, like acknowledge like the good, acknowledge the not so good, right? And like the repression might be the not so good, or the repression might be just like the security and the stability for you to like do life, right? Like for you to exist in it and survive in it. And I think that's something that's super important about getting into these psychology topics, whether we're talking about Freud or whether we're talking about Carl Jung, and is all about really like the integration, the exception, and also like balancing it out. Because I know for me, like hyperfixation is the thing. I have ADHD, which if y'all listen to this, you know that already. But I will like dive so deeply into one thing, and then I kind of throw myself off balance sometimes. And shadow work was one of those things that I like heavily dove into and brought myself into. I brought myself into balance and then out of balance by just focusing on that area and not doing the integration work. So it was like once I was unpacking the repression, right, and that was kind of coming out, then it was like the acknowledgement. I was acknowledging all of the things that I repressed, but I wasn't acknowledging all of the hard work I was putting in.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that
And
was
it's ironic that you mentioned shadow work, because last year I applied for a music grant called Shadow Work, and it's based on Carl Jung. And it's funny that, when I mentioned it to you, you knew exactly what I was talking about. And actually, you're going to be in my show. Can I do a plug?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm doing a music show with 4 spoken word artists. Pupa Santiago is going to be playing guitar in that show, and it's all based on Carl Jung. And I've asked these writers to express themselves, and you're going to be playing some glass bowls, and you're working on a piece with me, which is so beautiful. But people that don't know about Carl Jung, shadow work is basically it's a moral effort to become conscious of it. It involves recognizing the dark aspects of personality as present, right? You bring it to the surface and you work on it. So, like you were saying, we all have parts of ourselves that we don't like, or that we think society won't like. So we push those parts down into our unconscious. And it's a collection of repressed aspects of our identity that he referred to as the shadow self. I know it's deep, it's really deep, but we all go through this.
Mm-hmm.
in on different levels again. So
If we allow ourselves the space to, because it's like
yes,
the thing that something that shout out to David, rest in peace. One of these incredible humans that used to come to the moon ceremonies, he had always said, he had sent me this document. He used to send me emails of like just information that he's like scanned in from different things. Like he was 78, I believe, when he passed.
wow.
And he used to send me like these different documents in which he acquired from all of these different sacred spiritual circles he's been in all over the world. And one of them was talking about the subconscious, and it was, I forgot exactly the metaphor, so I'm not even going to like butcher it, but essentially the essence of it was whatever subconscious we don't actively try to make conscious,
Yeah.
is controlling our life. It's completely controlling our life. So either if you have like, even it's like a cheat code like that I've kind of like said to myself, like it's like, well, if you have control issues, right, like, and you would like to have somewhat of control, because naturally the only thing we have control of is ourselves, wouldn't you want to know what's controlling your life so that you can get control of it, right?
Yeah, and that's what you go to therapy for. You know, people that go to therapy, they think it's like oh, you're pouring your heart out. So no, a good therapist's job is to break down your defense mechanisms to get to the true self of really what's bothering you.
Yeah, I love therapy.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for my therapist.
So-
Yesterday we had such a great session, so I just want to like plug my therapist. Like
mine
shout out
too.
to you. Like
Mine too.
Therapy Tuesdays.
But
Yeah.
but you know, people that can't go to therapy, and this is why I'm talking about this today. You can do self therapy if you know what to work on.
I want to take a sip of this, but I want to do it
okay.
together. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I
definitely.
don't want
Oh,
to
here
cut
we
you
go.
up. All
Okay,
right, so just to clarify, because y'all know I make tea, right? So I got this women's philosopher advent calendar, right? I'm not sure what this tea is gonna taste like. It's like cherry burgundy. So shout out to the Eastern Shore Tea Company, right? So let's try it.
Okay.
Cheers to good
Cheers.
health and trying
So
new things.
this is berry cherry.
Burgundy.
Burgundy.
Cherry? I think, yeah, burgundy. That's pretty nice. It tastes better than it smelled, I have to be honest.
It's different.
Tell me how you really feel.
You can taste the cherry though, definitely. The burgundy, I don't know what that is, but
I think maybe it's just because the color.
maybe, yeah. Oh yeah, it is kind of a burgundy.
Yeah,
right.
because it's probably black tea and then like cherry. But
Definitely
yeah,
taste
this
the
I have to say, I almost every single tea that I've had in this like, I'm not religious, but I like really like advent calendars. But yeah, like it's really cool, and each of them come with a quote, and it's all women philosophers, and it come with 2 teas, so I could have someone try it with me. So today you're trying it with
Yeah,
me. So thank you
you.
for being adventurous.
Thank you. Yeah.
But I'm sorry, back to what you were saying.
So, yeah, so we were talking about therapy and what it means. You know, even if you think you're not, it's always nice to like just go to a therapist to see what it's all about. You know, try it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work for you.
Also, I want to give space for people that have weird situations with therapy, because I've had like really bad situations
Oh,
with therapy. I've
yeah.
had like trauma from therapy that I'm in therapy for now. Like it's
Well-
deep, you know what I mean? And
Well, that's the thing. You got to find the right one.
you got to find the right therapist.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage anyone who's looking to just keep looking. If you like, listen, I didn't have insurance for a time, and I like that discouraged me. I did all these different things, but the right person, the right place, the right space will come along for you. You know, whether it's resources, there are different non-for-profits that do provide you know, either low cost or accessible therapy. And also, you know, and even if you do have the best insurance in the world, you know, just really being intentional about who you pick as a therapist, you know, taking into account, like, who do you feel comfortable with talking to, you know, like, you don't want to be triggered instantly just by the human themselves. And and also just putting it out there, like, for one of the first questions I ask, I do that with anybody that I work with in like these kind of fields. one of my first questions are like, do you go to therapy? And how frequently do you go to therapy?
Oh,
Because like you're a therapist, right? Like so
yeah,
you damn well should go to therapy, right?
Right.
Because like you practicing what you preach.
right.
You know, like I'm a Reiki practitioner. I go to Reiki practitioners. If I didn't, like why would I how would I be able to maintain balance of when I'm doing treatments on other people?
No, it's true.
Yeah.
Do you
Same thing
go
with facials.
online for therapy or you go in person?
Funny enough, I actually go online, and I
Okay.
was super resistant to it.
Yeah.
And then, but it's just the right therapist, man.
Right,
Like, and
right.
now I'm like, yeah, like, honestly,
You
like,
don't want one sitting in their car, like, listening to the radio and you're doing therapy.
yeah,
and
like, honestly, like, it's really just the right people, and it's also about just like meeting yourself. Like, I did not think that I would ever be doing virtual therapy. Like, that
Yeah.
I had the biggest resistance to it. But then something told me about this woman. I was like, I don't know what it is. I feel like I'm supposed to work with her. She's been like the only therapist I ever had that didn't try to be my friend. Like, every therapist I had either tried to be my friend or my foe. Like, it was just one or the
Well,
other.
there's a fine line with that because and it's an ethical thing too. They are not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And basically, I mean, like my therapist, he's 70 years old. So he could be my father, right? And it's kind of nice for me anyway. It's nice to have that. Because he's kind of like a fatherly figure to me. So, okay, that works for me. It may not work for other people, but it's what you need at the time. And, like some people prefer younger women therapists that they see, or an older woman, a younger man, it depends.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I've had every little, like every single like human I've tried. I feel like I literally, like, during the pandemic, I was looking for a therapist right before the pandemic hit, and I wasn't getting luck. And then like once the pandemic hit, it was like near impossible to get one. And I remember there was specifically this one company that I was like contacting, and I was talking to them, and it was like specific, the demographic was for like minorities, and like,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, this is great, like this is cool, like I love the accessibility for that, like, and I was like talking to them, and like me and the person at the front desk ended up becoming friends. Like, I was calling every other day to see if another one of I was like following up, and then it didn't end up working out. Like, the person just was so booked with so many people.
And that's a thing today too.
It didn't end up working out, and I felt discouraged, like, and I was like, oh, should I be looking, and then I just, something told me to just keep doing it, and then I found the right therapist, and I've been working with her for like 2 years now.
Oh wow, that's great.
A year and a half.
So
2
you have to
years,
be able to
yeah.
feel comfortable with the person.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the most important thing because you're sharing.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to feel comfortable and respect them as a therapist, that they'll be able to have that
Poise and like
connection
yeah.
and yeah, I mean,
and also
it's-
the boundaries, like
yes.
like they need to have such strong boundaries with us, like, because it's like we're not there to just shoot the shit, like you said, like we're there to dismantle my defense mechanism so I can actually deem myself worthy of like existing and then thriving. Like,
there's a like, that's a fine line too with boundaries, because you don't want a therapist that, like, I've never liked the therapist that was so stiff and rigid that they wouldn't share one iota of thing with them about themselves. Like my therapist,
I felt the same way.
he's like a human being too. So if I mention something, he goes, oh yeah, I like that band. Like he acknowledges things that I feel like I have something in common with him that I'm able to share.
Yeah.
So it's tricky. It's really tricky.
It's such a fine
Yeah.
line, and it shifts and it changes. I completely
Yes.
agree. Like
Yes.
I was just talking to my friend the other day, like we were talking about I forgot exactly what we were talking about, but essentially it was where I was coming from was I was saying how things with experience, how if like someone, even if they're not like a therapist, or if they're not a real estate or whatever the topic is,
Yeah.
if they have life experience, I feel like that's so important, right? I feel like, honestly, I feel like it's a lot of times even more important than the book smarts with certain things, right? So I used to only go to therapists. I only felt like I could be and talk to therapists that like had suffered significant loss. If you're gonna talk to me about bereavement and like and grief, like how would you know if you didn't experience, like,
Yeah.
and I would ask these kind of like personal questions, you know, and I don't know how invasive or boundary breaking that is or was, or however that went about it, but that was like my way. And like, it's interesting because now I didn't even ask my therapist that. I just, you find the right person,
Yeah.
and it's just like this feeling that you feel that's just like, oh, this is working for me. Like I'll get done with my session, or like even before I'm done with my session, I'm like, girl, you're good at your job. Like,
Well, I think it's the way they answer your questions too.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the way, it's the knowledge that they bring to the table that you acknowledge and recognize.
yeah,
That you're in the right space at the right time, and
for sure.
yeah.
It's like, it's also the matter of like you
Because-
being honest with yourself.
Yeah, because therapists, I mean, they deal with different, like my therapist, he works with couples, he works with younger people with drug addiction, you know, the gamut across the board he works with. And we had that conversation because he knows, like, I studied psychology. I mean, I know exactly why I'm there. And he told me that couples therapy is the hardest. The hardest thing.
It's a lot of
Because you're
elements.
maneuvering both, two personalities at one time. So I said, God bless. Yeah, it's like, but yeah, I think therapy is a good thing, and people shouldn't judge other people if they're in therapy, which happens sometimes too.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah, I hit
Right.
a certain point where I'm like, you know, like I just like shamelessly, like I don't give a shit. Like, honestly, I really don't. Like, it benefits me. I really don't care if anybody
Yeah.
thinks. I'm like, because I'm like, rather than, you know, like there's like simultaneously, I feel like there's you know, on a healing level, like there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just active. I'm like myself, and then also I'm like, yeah, there's something like going on. You know what I mean? And no one's gonna be able to take that away from me or use that against me. Like, it's like I'd rather someone be like, oh, you're in therapy, than be like, why aren't you in therapy, right?
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. That's
You
a
know what
good
I mean?
point.
And even
Yeah.
so, like, it's benefiting me, and it's like usually the people who are saying that need therapy, you know what I mean? And it's like most of the people who are in therapy are getting therapy are getting therapy for and from the people who need therapy that aren't going to therapy, right? And then
Interesting enough, yeah.
so many different layers to it, but I think
Yeah.
just having an unbiased, safe space, just like separate from your inner circle, is so important.
Yeah, and the one great thing about my therapist too, I don't, you know, but I never leave that office feeling bad. You know, he always makes a point to try to end it on an up note.
Yeah.
You know, because you know, sometimes, well, I can't say that, but he always tries to end it on an up note, so I don't leave feeling like crying and
Yeah.
you know, upset and whatever, because I mean the topics are heavy.
And it's a skill, because like I feel very similar with my therapist. Like, it's like their time management skill. You have to have impeccable time management skills to really navigate such heavy things in like
Yeah.
an hour, right?
Oh,
And then,
yeah.
and then be able to like, because it's not their job for them to like leave us great after, you know, but I think that it's bare minimum to leave us neutral,
Yeah.
right? You know,
Right.
like, don't leave us fucking hanging,
Yeah.
right? You
Until
know?
next week, continue.
which I like, you know, I see, and like it's so interesting because at first when I started working with my therapist, she's so good at time management,
Yeah.
and that's something that I struggle with. Sometimes I have periods of like being like incredible with it, but like most of the time it's like I'm late. Usually that's
Yeah.
like that's usually my thing. And when I mean late, I mean not only am I late to arrive, but I usually am like, I give so much time and space. Like, I struggle with time management when people are talking to me, because it's like, I don't know if I can't, I have a hard time, you know, I think that I have a fear of not giving space to someone who needs it.
Yeah.
And because of that, sometimes I even think that I give too much space. So like, people who are in therapy, like therapists, like who are able to manage their time, I feel like are like, you know, they're time wizards. You know what I mean? They're really like, because I'm looking at my therapist as we're speaking, and it's not like she's looking at the time. It's not like she got a timer, you know. It's like she just knows, like,
Yeah.
okay, you know, we're at the middle point, so we're gonna like, I'm gonna stop her from talking nonstop now,
Yeah.
and I'm going to reel her back into her body, and you know, and we're gonna ground, and we're gonna do like something, and like, I have to say I'm not easily impressed, and I'm just really guessing. Maybe one day she'll listen to it. I have no idea, but I'm not easily impressed, and I have to say, when you find the right people to work with, and this doesn't just apply in therapy, I believe this applies in everything. Like, when you are compatible with people and in different spaces, especially when it comes to like healing spaces, it's just like I'm like in awe of being able to have someone hold the space for me to help myself the way I do for others, because I can honestly say I don't think in my entire life like I've had something that's like treatment wise, my elder and different people wise, yes, I have that and I'm grateful for that space, but like therapy wise I never had that. So like that always like blows my mind. Anything that's more Western that actually works like always blows my mind now, so
Yeah. So, okay, so repression. The next one is denial. So it's if a situation becomes too much to handle, we'll refuse to experience it. For example, smokers may refuse to admit to themselves that smoking is bad for their health. So they deny it and they keep smoking. But denial plays a very big role for all of us, when we're in a situation that we just don't want to be in. We'll walk away. We deny that it even exists. So that's another thing with acknowledgement, to others. We'll go on projection. We attribute our own unacceptable thoughts and feelings and motives to another person. So you believe you can solve the problem if you put it onto someone else. So you try to project a situation that's undesirable onto someone else, which isn't good. I mean, you should be able to deal with it yourself and
also projecting desirable situations onto someone else.
Okay, there's a positive twist to it.
I don't know if it's necessarily positive as it is just like but it's more like some people are waiting for other people to come save them, so there's two sides of the coin. And it's like it might not be the traditional of like looking like a damsel in distress or gold digger, like something like that. It could be very, very layered, and it could look very different. I feel like people with significant losses subconsciously sometimes go through the process of like hyper individualism, and then also like this space of codependency that manifests and morphs into something like that. Like, okay, like even though I'm trying to do this all myself, subconsciously it almost could feel like, well, when this person does this is what's going to make me do that, even if that's not what you think.
Right.
Your subconscious could be waiting for that, because people especially who lose like parents, because it's like when you lose a parent young, like a part of your brain, like it's like you stop getting that like nurture and discipline and like wherever they did those things, right? So like your brain tries to find it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And usually that's relationships, and then so I say that to just give that perspective of that, because that's something transparently that I've been personally working on, because of my own traumas and my own things. So just like understanding that, even though like for myself in my head, I've always been like, oh, okay, well, like I'm going to do it on my own. Like I got it. And then like in therapy a few weeks ago or however long ago, when we were talking about like, well, are you subconsciously waiting for someone or something to be a catalyst for you to then just be good?
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, no, denial, right?
Yeah.
Yes, like, no,
exactly.
like,
Yeah.
of course not. Like,
See,
what do you mean? And then I sat with it, and I was like on a very like 17-year-old teenager inner child way, like that kind of is. So like that's what I mean, the
Well,
positive aspect.
that's
but
one
it's
of
kinda
the
still
that's
neutral
one of the
negative.
other things that it's funny that you say that. Regression is another defense mechanism, because it's going backwards and facing a stressful moment, like triggers, going all the way back to old habits, and childhood
Yep.
is included in that. So that's a form of a defense mechanism.
I feel like that one comes out a lot with anger with a lot of people. You know,
Yes.
you see how far somebody's along when you get them in a heated conversation, and if they're like screaming and doing all these things and waving around, it's like they go back to being like a 5-year-old.
Yes.
You know, you see how how quick they revert.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I mean, like all of these, and it's not just one. All of these can hit you simultaneously in one day. You know, it's not just like, oh, today I have denial, or today I have regression.
That's like the stages of grief. That's
Right.
like what I was talking about the
Right.
last podcast. It's like, you know, we think, oh, okay, I'm at stage 2, so I only have 4 more steps to go. It's like, nah, like you can, like healing is not linear. You
Yeah.
can jump around from like denial, regression, projection, denial, all in one day,
Absolutely.
all in one conversation.
Yeah. So this is a big one, displacement, and it's satisfying yourself on impulse, and it is an impulse. It's an aggression. It's you like a substitute object. For instance, you have a bad day and you come home and you kick the dog. You know, it's doing something else to get out your aggressive thoughts, or just like this impulse that you do, that it's a reflex almost.
It's like road rage, or like, you know,
Yes.
or like when you just having that quick response that you're not thinking about, that's like very depthful when it's like a very surface situation.
Yeah.
You know, it's so interesting because I didn't realize that displacement was like what I would have thought that would be projection, you know.
Well, they're similar, but they're
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Displacement is when you actually act out on something impulsively.
And then projection is when you're thinking.
Yes, you think of your unacceptable thoughts
Learn me
and
something
feelings,
today.
and you believe you can solve the problem to project it onto someone else, right? So they're two very different things, but they're similar.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they feel similar in the body too. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. Thank you for that. Thank you for all of this knowledge that you're
Yeah.
passing on to me and all the folks.
Rationalization is the big one that I run into people all the time that do this, and they don't realize they're doing it, or they may realize, I don't know. I catch myself, and that's the thing about this discussion today. It's like I said, it's not like you know, anything meant to be like bad. This is a list, a self-help list, I call it, because we can then use these tools to try to help make ourselves a better person, so we can call that person that day and say, hey, how you doing? You know, these are things to learn how to be kind to people. And all of us have these things. So rationalization, we talk ourselves into believing that we're correct, and we basically believe in our own bullshit.
Borderline pathological.
Yeah. and I run into it all the time, and you know, people get into heated, well, a perfect example of this, and I really didn't want to, we'll touch on it and then get away from it quickly, but the political realm of the world today, you know, with the Republicans and the Democrats, and you know, each of those groups think that they're correct.
Yeah.
You know, so
There's no gray area.
right. And that's a hard thing for many of us to watch and take, you know, the way the world is right now, with these different groups that are rationalizing that their way is better
Being radical.
than somebody else, and then they become radical. Having rationalization, you're quick to judge other people, which judgment is really brought on by flaws within ourselves. That we have to judge other people because we can't love ourselves. So, like I said, all of this stuff runs really deep, but I think I do have issues with and it always comes up for me, why don't they get it? You know, why just don't
Being
they
understood.
Yeah, why don't they understand, like,
Hmm.
this is wrong?
Yeah.
Or, why aren't all the women in the world onto the Roe versus Wade, or women's rights, or, it's this rationalization that it really gets us into trouble.
Yeah.
It does.
Because we're
Because,
expecting ourselves from other people. We're expecting our entire, like, as one human, and all of the knowledge and information and disinformation, whatever experience that we've experienced in our lifetime as the person we are then projecting and rationalizing that other people can or will be and have and act from the places that we do,
yeah,
which is kind of impossible. That's why it's like really like brain fulfilling when you meet people that do have niche pockets that you do, or do have similar beliefs, different similar moral systems, that you're like, oh my god, like I feel understood. Like we naturally gravitate towards people that we can relate to. It doesn't mean that people we don't relate to that we shouldn't give space for, because that's how we learn. That's how we learn and get different experiences. But also it's okay to like find those people that we are like, oh my goodness, we think so similar, like that's so good. It's like it's also good to like ground that, right? Because then when you don't ground it, then you put it on a pedestal, and that person's bound to fall off of it because they're human and they don't even know that they're on a pedestal, so they're naturally going to step off of it
mm,
or fall off of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why I said at the beginning, it's a moral effort.
Yeah.
It's not just within ourselves. It's with all cultures, and that's another thing too. In the 50s and 60s, there wasn't as many different cultures in America. I don't believe it. It was, honestly, I have to say, it was more black and white. We didn't have a lot of Muslims in our country. We didn't have a lot of the melting pot of amazing different cultures that we have now. So what has changed from then to now too is all these different cultures are living in their cultural moral beliefs, and other people are quick to judge them about the way they live. Who are we to say how another culture lives unless we lived it and can understand it? And honestly, I will never understand, like what it's like to be black or what it's like to be Muslim, because I'm not thrown into that situation to live it. They different people live different lives too. So when you're out there and having conversations with people, I always, again, words stick. I'm always very careful as to how I speak, because you don't know who's going to be listening.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, I feel like to acknowledge what you're saying, and also just to acknowledge for as far as from what I can understand as far as that, like in history, is like I feel like that's like a lot of that's like textbook history, because the thing is like, well, first and foremost there's the natives that were here, and then second off there's like, all of the different slaves that came here wasn't just from Africa. Like a lot of them were indigenous, that people from the Caribbean. There was a lot of different Caribbean cultures. There were so many cultures, I just don't think they were accounted for. That's where race comes in. You know what I
Mm,
mean? That's
yeah.
where it's like the black and the white. Like it's someone could be Hispanic, like literally someone could be coming from South America, Chile, Argentina, or Colombia, Jamaica, wherever, and like they could be like really light skinned, but you're gonna associate them with being white, so they're gonna maybe think they're European, or
Mm,
maybe think that they're Spaniard, right? Because these were like the conquistadors that came
yeah.
here, and then there's the opposite. So there was always like first and foremost there was the natives, and then there were the colonizers and the slaves that came here, and depending on the shade of them.
Hmm.
So it's like in history that's just looked at as black and white. But I think that traditionally, like as far as like to agree with you in the sense like maybe there wasn't as much Middle Eastern people that came over, or Asian folks that came over here until later on.
Yeah.
When America became like free place, kind of situation, like opportunity and like new world, and then everyone started coming in, but yeah, like I feel like there's so much history in America that is not taught to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course. And I think they took some history classes out of school, for kids to learn about, like European history and how it all formed, and but it's very prevalent now, and I get upset with the whole thing and the whole racism and bigots and all of that, because I don't understand what the big deal is. Just let people be people. It really upsets me.
Yeah.
So, how do you navigate through that? It's like
there's so many different people that are just like, I don't, my thoughts change so much on this, because it's like there's certain people that just do such horrendous things, and you're like, you want to believe that people aren't innately bad, and maybe it was the trauma that made them like that, and then there's some people, like, you just never know, and it's just such a rabbit hole of thinking to go into, and to center it back to one of the topics of the podcast is just like, just be kind, you know what I mean? Like, but there's also a certain space for certain, like rage has space too. Like, you don't have to just be kind. Rage has space too. If like you're seeing like someone acting belligerently prejudiced, racist, whatever the case is, like, you don't have to stand there and not say or do anything just because you're not the person that they're targeting, because tomorrow you could be the person they're targeting. Right. And even if that wasn't the case, like, it's just, it doesn't mean that you have to beat the shit out of people, but you could say something, you know what I mean? Or you could beat the, say that. But like, there's so many elements to being a human, right?
Yeah.
And
it's hard because, knowing all these defense mechanisms that we're talking about, and, do this, do that, you start like this self-evaluation and how you're treating people, and you want to be kind, but some things annoy you, and should I or shouldn't I say something? How do you I think the word is filter. How do you filter yourself, and still get the self-fulfillment and self-love that you want to achieve through all of this camaraderie of people that you meet?
Something that I was sharing with someone who's very close to me last week or something, me and this amazing human that I love very much had gotten into a little bit of an argument, and when I had said to her, I'm like, you gotta take a breath, and think, like, because she had said something super impulsively to me, and I was leaving my house, and and I was like, it was just not the time or space. Like, it was very inconsiderate to the different things that she knows I'm experiencing, and it was just like not the time or space for it, but like she needed to get it out. But she couldn't identify if she needed to get it out for me or for her, because she didn't take a breath. So if it's something, shout out to my elder Joe, like, he always says to me, is just like, take a breath, Ash. You are speaking so fast. Like, take a breath, so naturally, like, I've been really trying to apply that, and I feel like
I think it's good advice.
Because like I words are words, but like I would, in my mind, when I think of filter, I think of like like water, right? You're taking things out, and like, yes, I feel like that's smart, but as like a recovering people pleaser, I wouldn't use the term filter for me. I would use ground, because I get too up here, right? So I would filter too much where I wouldn't actually be saying what I wanted to say.
Okay.
So I would personally say for myself, like, how can I ground myself to make sure that I'm honoring what I need to say for me, and also what I feel should be said for the person. And there's some kind of philosopher, teacher, whoever, respectfully, like
one of
those guys, and that they say, like, before speaking, ask yourself, is it kind, is it necessary, and is it beneficial? And then speak. Like, even just taking that moment, count your 10 fingers and your 10 toes, and then if you still feel like you need to say it, then say it.
Yeah.
But if you don't, then don't. And if you do and you don't know how to say it, then just be like, hey, like, I want to say something to you, but I'm having a hard time processing it right now, so I'm gonna circle back to it, or I'm gonna come back to it. If a person is sitting there waiting, like, communicating and just being honest with your communication. You might be too triggered in a moment to say things. Like I've been catching myself more than ever now, not just like popping off at the fly of something going on, because like I've always been very quick to say, and now I'm like, because words, you can't take them back.
Well, yeah, and you have to realize what are going to be the consequences of that.
Absolutely.
There's sometimes a great fear in saying something because you don't know how people are going to react to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have that situation all the time, so I'd rather not say anything and just let it pass, and then to come right out and say it, because I don't know, if it's a good place, like you were saying, a time and place.
Well, just checking in with people, I think, is super good. Is being like, hey, are you open to speaking right now?
Yeah.
Like, even just simply that, like, even if the person who said was just like, hey, are you open to like hearing something I have to share right now? I would have been like, no, honestly. I'm not. Like, I'm hanging on by a thread right now. If you say anything, I'm gonna fucking cry. Like, so I would have just been honest, just like you're being honest.
Yeah.
I think it's about consent. You know what I mean? Because when you take the consent away, that's what changes, like, that's where the pivot of like dumping on someone or venting to someone comes in. It's like, hey, do you have space for me to talk to you right now? Or, hey, dives into everything, doesn't even say how are you, or says how are you without the care of how are you, just to say it, just to seem passionate, but really the intention is to dump. Yeah. Because people feel that. Yeah. And then it's irritating, because then you're like, oh, you called me to fake say hey, how are you, to tell me all of this shit, and then be like, okay, gotta go bye. Like, that doesn't feel great. Yeah. And then and that's why I feel like, even like,
those are lessons to be learned too.
They are, sure. And I've been guilty of that too at different times in my life. That's why it takes one to know it. And I tell people that all the time. Like, it takes one to know it.
I think it's hard, like in a heat of emotion, though, to rationalize like what you're supposed to.
Yeah, we literally get dumber when we're angry.
Oh, of course,
like,
of
our
course.
IQ level, like,
of
shrinks.
course, everybody does, and it's really hard. I mean, all these things we're talking about are really difficult, and it's a process.
For sure.
It's not like, oh, tomorrow I'm going to be good. Tomorrow you may be good in one thing, but then the other one fails.
Yeah, you might suck at everything else, but you're good at one thing, which leads us to the topic.
But it's kind of scary, though, because then you think, am I ever going to get it right? Is this a life? Yes, it's a life thing.
Which leads us to the topic of giving yourself credit.
Right. Okay.
So giving ourselves credit, right? Yeah. All of this work, all of these different layers and levels and these different defense mechanisms that you got into. Like, I love that we got into the subconscious today. Like, I love that. Like, I'm here for it. I think that, it's super beneficial, not only for, people to hear, but even just to talk about it. It's something that makes me kick my legs, and and it's real, it's raw, it's genuine, it's authentic. All right, now, like, here's the work we're doing. Here's the shadow work, right, guys? This is all the shadow work that we're doing. Yeah. What is the acknowledgement?
Well, yeah, and this is true too. We all wear masks we all wear masks to cover up our flaws and project an image of perfection when we are not. So that's like everybody's walking around like, oh, I'm great, when they may not be. So it's
well, that's it. And like, everyone has different masks, and I feel like even if like I think that, like, I want to give a metaphor.
Okay.
If we all have masks, some people have opaque ones, so some people have transparent ones, like those purge masks that are clear, right? Let's not make them creepy though. Let's make them pretty. So we make all of these different masks, all these different faces, social media, different posts, different feelings, all of these different things that we say to people, the things we choose to say, with things we choose to withhold, right? Yeah. It's easy to go and judge that. And to be like, bitch, why were you not just honest? Like, why were you not just honest? Or why do you say that? That was weird of you. And we just judge. Okay, pause. What if we looked at our mask like arts and crafts? What if we look at the mask like, everyone got one, might as well make mine pretty? Yeah. Why don't I give myself credit that I can make art on the outside of myself, and every time I choose to acknowledge and see the truer self, the more transparent it gets, the more it starts to become clearer and clearer and clearer. And then I don't even have to wear this thing anymore,
Exactly.
which we're going to always have to. It's impossible to just completely eliminate it. Like, but
Sometimes.
because things happen where we have to put it back on the way society is built, you know. And it's like, you know, like you got to put a mask on if like you're, you know, if you're
Maybe if only to process something.
exactly. It doesn't have to be a permanent fixture.
Right.
But there's certain times where, so rather than looking at the mask as this negative imposter false reality, why don't we look at it as something that we're co-creating with, right? The mask is essentially the ego. Why don't we look at it and decorate it? We can name it. We can make it pretty. Like, look at it and then acknowledging, because I feel like that's the work of giving yourself acknowledgement, is even taking the time to acknowledge and decorate your mask the way you want it to be, not the default one that you bought from the Halloween store that's mad ugly.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's
make it personal.
Yeah, let's make it personal, and let's make it pretty, and let's make it fun, and let's not feel guilt and shame of just being a fucking person.
Yeah.
We're just a person. We're just a people. It's just a little people humaning.
Yeah.
Just figuring it out, you know. We're babies, we're adults, we're all different things. So like another thing that just like, you know, just to kind of circle it all back and like bring it into that space of like, we know or maybe we don't know, but maybe we have an idea or a concept how to nitpick ourselves. You know, maybe that's something that was built into our system naturally. But let's download how to like also process, like looking, you know, like kind of going through your history and being able to observe it,
Right.
not for the detailed things that you did, but just looking at it like within your year and being like, wow, like I did so many things. Like even separating, you don't have to read each tab and be like, why the fuck did I look that up? You would be like, oh my God, I looked up so many things. Like I did so many things. And like taking out that judgment, even if you regressed, even if you deflected, if you, what was the other one? Displacement, all of the things, even if you did every single one of these things, which you did, I know I did, right? And why don't you just be like, you know, it's not about not giving yourself yes, giving yourself the accountability, like, of course, like, some of these things I'm not okay with, but you learned.
Yeah.
Some things you need to learn by mistake.
Yeah.
You can't learn by any other experience besides trying it and failing at it.
And with practice too, you know, like every day, you know, maybe you can, you know, tell yourself like a self affirmation, you know, oh, today's going to be a good day. I like what I'm doing today. Nothing's going to bother me. I'm going to go out and just have a great day and enjoy life. And
because I'm going to make it a good day. Because even
Right.
if you get stuck in traffic, then you get to listen to the audiobook that you've been wanting to listen to. Even if, because it's like, I feel like when you say those affirmations, those are the days.
Yeah.
Those are the days you get tested.
everything.
Like, everything's
yeah.
like, what'd you say about a good day? You trying to go back on that?
Yeah.
Because I got some
But
ideas.
it takes a lot
got
of
some
practice.
plans.
It really does. You have to practice it every single day in order to feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
And
Every moment.
you know, it's not easy. And like I said, we all have these issues, all of us. But you know, and you're saying bringing it back, you know, just try to be kind to other people because you really don't know what they're going through.
Yeah, I know it starts with being kind to yourself, because
Yeah,
you don't
and
have the
yourself,
capacity
and yourself.
to be kind to other people if you're not kind to yourself. You
Right.
literally don't. If you're being so harsh on yourself, you can't be kind to people. And if you are kind to people and you're not kind to yourself, it's usually coming from that codependent space, which is coming from that like, you need something, so you're doing it to other people, and you're subconsciously wanting other people to do it to you.
Yeah.
So now you're being kind, and whether it's conscious or subconscious, you're being kind because you want them to be kind to you, or you want them to like you, acknowledge you, and give you what you're missing and what you're craving. And this is your sign to give it to your fucking self.
Yeah.
Like this is your sign to do it.
and I you know,
With love.
No, it's true, and the hard thing is, and where we get like stuck is that we expect it back from people. You can't because not everybody's like you. You know, not everybody's going to be practicing this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the hard reality.
And
To
that's
self-love without getting anything from anybody to sort of acknowledge things that you're doing. So you got to do it for yourself.
Gotta do it for yourself.
Totally difficult. To
And
do.
life will literally put you, like we were talking about, will literally put you in circumstances
Yeah.
where you need to acknowledge yourself. Like, you know, I've talked about this on a few podcasts. I'll kind of say it in a nutshell, but like there was something that I was like, when I first started doing the moon meets, like no one knew I was like hosting or curating or setting up the altar or setting up the room. I would walk in and I would just sit down, and I was like, you know, after a certain point, I was getting angry, not just at that situation in general. I'm like, I don't get acknowledged for nothing. Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't get acknowledged for nothing that I do in my life. Like, it's crazy. Like, I'm everyone's support system. I'm the person in the shadows. I'm the person who's organizing all this stuff. And, like, in my head, I'm like, this is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, are you acknowledging yourself? Are you even allowing people the space to acknowledge you? Because you've masked so much that you tricked yourself that you weren't hiding. Yeah. You were hiding. You were doing and supporting, but you were hiding. And then like little by little, was it uncomfortable? Of course, you know, finally the life circumstances. It's funny because a friend of mine, he had said like, okay, I'm done with you being in the shadows. Like, you need to set up here. And I was like, oh my God, no. Like, you know, and then slowly but surely I did. And even in me being uncomfortable, like, I was giving myself the acknowledgement. And then a lot of other people were giving myself the acknowledgement. And by that point, I didn't even want it, really. Like, I didn't need it. Let me say, I didn't want it because, you know, like,
but at
everyone
some
likes
point through that process,
but I didn't need it.
At some point through that process, you must have asked yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I not giving myself the acknowledgement?
Exactly.
You know,
because I wasn't acknowledged.
But but you gave your answer through what you were telling me, which is that it was the thing right before your friend said you need to get.
I was hiding.
Right, you were hiding.
Yeah, I was hiding because
you were fearful.
To be hidden is less vulnerable than to be visible.
Yes.
This shit right here, being on screen, all this stuff, like, this is new version of self. This is progressed self. I was so afraid of anything like this. Yeah. I was like, that is crazy. People who do that are wild. Like, that's amazing, but that's not for me. You know, like, I remember being in media, funny enough, right? In middle school, I would pretend to be sick every time we had to present any project, like, you know, and I fear of being seen. But the thing is, to be courageous is vulnerability. Shout out Brene Brown. I'm saying your name right. I'm sorry, I don't know. But yes, shout out to her. And like, her like philosophy is always like, you know, vulnerability, courage is vulnerability. We think vulnerability like scared and afraid. But to be courageous, to be visible, is to be vulnerable, because someone can look at you and be like, wow, that's crazy. Look at this outfit. Look at your hat. Look at your hair. Look at everything and you can think, if you're worried about what other people are doing and thinking, you'll go into a hole and you will fulfill every fear you have. But if you go back to yourself and you acknowledge yourself and give yourself credit, like, okay, I might have came up here busted on this podcast, but like, I'm on this podcast and I'm talking about very valid things, and I love that for me. So I don't really care about the visible, like that part. Like, you're choosing to give yourself credit for all of the hard work that you're doing, and that involves being honest. Like, should you be gassed? No, be able to walk through the doorway. You know what I'm saying? Like, being able to like be in your feet. You know, you're not the best at everything. You're not the worst at everything either. You're you're doing the best that you can do in the moment. You know, even if that's like obnoxious in this way, or even if that's like completely too humble in another way. You know, because some of us are too humble and some of us are too gassed and too cocky, you know? And like, that's why I feel like we tend to meet these kinds of characters and people, because we're meant to trigger each other, because you're like, all right, well, I can actually be a little bit more confident. Why am I being so humble? Like, I've been studying this for like 17 years. Like, you know what I mean? You're like, why shouldn't I put myself out there? You know? And then the opposite is like, well, I have only been trying to study this for 5 minutes. Maybe I should sit down and learn from someone who's been doing it for 17 years. So it's all needed.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, knowing, just knowing, you know, when to do, when not to do, knowing your limits, and that's a whole other topic.
Checking in with yourself and your environment.
Yeah, and if there
it
is,
all ties in
you
for
know,
sure.
I always feel there are no limits. You do what you do at the time you feel like doing it. You know, if you enjoy it, then just do it.
Yep.
You know, you don't have to ask permission from anyone to do it. So, by the way, I think you're one of the smartest people I've met in a long time, because you know, for as much as you say, you know, like you're sort of insecure, like with certain things and stuff, you are really brilliant with these podcasts, and you speak the language and speak the truth. So
Thank you.
Smart cookie.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Sure.
Thank you. Takes one to know one.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Like, you know, it's.
And you should be doing these. You definitely should, because there's a lot to be learned, you know, through these podcasts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm getting mad meeps about the compliments. But you know what? Thank you. I'll give myself.
Yeah.
I'll
Give yourself that, yes.
I'll give myself that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm like working on that. You know, not receiving that stuff. You know, but yes, thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
And
Sure.
you know, giving ourselves credit, that's what we're here for, right?
Yep.
So, you know, being acknowledged on the things that we've been putting in efforts and work for is a part of that. So there you have it, live, real, genuine situation right there, right? So once again, I'm sorry, you were going to say?
Oh, well, are we going to read something from the book? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, once again, just to have a reminder for everyone that's like, if you feel like you're constantly waiting for something, I strongly suggest that if you have the space, or to create, if you're able to create the space, to really just ask yourself what it is that you really want from life, and then ask yourself if you're waiting for it, you know, from someone or something else, right? And then I encourage you to find the root of that and work on giving it to yourself.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm not only saying that to you guys, I'm saying that to myself. So, yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Sharing so many different things.
I enjoy talking about this stuff. Can I just say that my art exhibit's coming up in January 21st and 22nd, and it's called Coexist. And it's basically paintings that I've done the last 3 years with animals and, you know, coexisting wildlife on Staten Island.
Yo, my boys are in there.
Oh yeah,
My
and some portraits that I practice with friends' pets. So that's in it too. Yeah, your boys
you guys
are in there.
gonna see my cats. They look, not only did you, I'm not gonna say she, because like I'm gonna acknowledge you're sitting right here. Not only did you paint my boys,
Yeah.
but you captured their essence in such a strong way, and they're both like. They're both black cats, so
Yeah.
it's hard to get like all of the features and the light, and you managed to do that, and that's incredible. And you brought me so much joy and so much like
well, they're
love
so
and
cute.
comfort. Oh my God, thank you,
Yeah,
thank you.
they're so
They're
cute.
chaotic.
Yeah.
I love them though. They're intense, but you know they wouldn't be my cats if they weren't,
Yeah.
right? So
And then let's not forget February 4th, we're doing a show. Ash is going to be in it.
pull up.
Called Shadow Work, and it's a collection of some of the music that I'm writing around spoken word artists talking about what we were talking about today. It's kind of like a chill feel music, that kind of vibe, and it is free, and it's through a grant through Staten Island Arts, which I encourage everybody to apply for grants because they allow you to do some fantastic stuff. And that's it. Those 2 shows.
Yeah,
So,
and where can we find you? What different platforms or anything that you want to plug in?
Yeah, just KimbraEberly.net.
Okay,
Find
boom.
everything.
Right there.
Yeah.
There you go. Got your hub of everything you need to find from you.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, it's good.
Okay. Cool. So, would you like to open up, and so y'all know what I do with the books, and it's like a tarot kind of situation. I usually just set the intention. What is it that we need to hear right now? And then I'll close my eyes and I'll let my thumb pick a page.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
would you like to do that?
Sure. All right. So it's called Mind Platter. Okay, interesting. Oh, okay. So I have to ask, because the drums are being used. What? Oh, I love. Later on, I just want to record this sound so I can pick a key. If you got what my meaning. Okay. All right.
Yeah, the bowls will be a part of that project as well. So,
Or
I'm really
bowls, I should say.
yeah,
Yes,
I'm really excited for that.
I am. I love these bowls.
They love you too.
Okay, so a page. I don't even know. Let's go to the beginning. There we go.
Which one?
Oh God. All right. I'm right-handed, so we go right-handed.
Do you want to read? Want me to read it?
You can read. Go ahead.
Feel me. I can point you towards the sky, but I can't make you reach for the stars. I can show you the moon, but I can't make you feel its beauty or appreciate its light. I can show you the pathways that you can take, but I can't make you walk down them. I can extend my hand to help you, but I can't make you hold it. I can tell you the truth, but I can't make you believe it. I can tell you how I feel, but I can't make you care. Feel me. Page 13.
Wow.
You hear me, but do you feel me, though? Shout out Janae, go. So, yeah. Sit with that, all right? I'm going to post it. You could feel these vibrations if you're into that kind of thing, you know? So I'm going to set the intention. Solar plexus is all about our inner child. It's all about our confidence. It's all about it could be everything, you know? It could be our humbleness, our cockiness. I'm putting the intention in here to just bring that encouragement to acknowledge ourselves and all the things, just thinking about everything that we've done this year, good, not so good, everything, and just acknowledge ourselves for all of the experience, the learning, the growing, the healing, the anger, the happiness, the sadness, the neutral, everything, to just acknowledge that and to give us that belief within ourselves to, you know, for anyone who just needs that encouragement to keep on going, like you're so worthy, you're so deserving, like you are so needed. Keep doing what you're doing, keep creating, keep destroying, all that. So if you are open to it, taking a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Closing your eyes if they aren't already, and just getting yourself comfortable in your seat. Beginning to scan your head from the top of your hair, top of your head, scanning down, not judging, just acknowledging. Releasing any tension in your face, jaw, neck, shoulders, chest, arms, elbows, wrists, fingers, lower back, hips, seat, legs, knees, calves, ankles, foot, and toes. And just imagining yourself covered in like an egg. And this egg of light, like feeling just kind of like a bubble, rather. So it's like translucent and colorful. And once I start to play this bowl, you know, becoming aware of any other colors or things you may see, maybe there's some debris, maybe there's some gray or black, maybe some blue or purple. Paying attention to what you observe, not judging it, and just allowing the vibration of this bowl to be the vacuum, to be the Windex, to go in and clean this bubble up, and imagine with every sound and every rotation of this bowl, gold light entering that bubble and just building and building and protecting and shining in a good way like that out. Giving yourself acknowledgement and giving yourself credit for everything that you deserve to tell yourself in a good way. I believe in you, and I'm so thankful for your experiences. May you continue to share them with the world, not only with your words, but with your actions. And just beginning to ground yourself into this space, moving your fingers, your legs, your ankles, and take that with you throughout your day. Thank you so much for tuning in with us, and see you next week.